Have you struggled, even secretly, with food? Well, maybe you've wasted a lot of time, money, and energy on all sorts of different diets and programs. And did you know that you were born with a natural, instinctive relationship with food? I mean, it was apparent as a young child when you were hungry and then when you were full. Well, today, our guest, Dr. Michelle May, well, she struggled with her relationship with food and her body image for nearly 25 years, and she saw many of her patients with the same sort of struggle. And so she finally realized that diets made her feel powerless as they gave food all the power. And today, over 20 years later, well, she can eat what she loves without deprivation or guilt and is passionate about sharing her findings to help others do the same. So you won't want to miss any of our conversation today. So stay tuned. This podcast is brought to you by DJ Works Media and HalftimeSuccess.com, offering resources and insights for those at mid-career or the halftime of life. Explore our diverse categories, including courses, coaching, health, music, software, and travel. We're here to help you make this stage of life your best ever. So get our new articles, downloads, and podcasts by signing up for weekly updates at goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Well, I'm excited to have Dr. Michelle May here today, and I love the title of your business, Am I Hungry? And I always go, well, yes. Well, not really, but I like to eat. So, we have a great topic today, and you have quite the background because you are an MD, but you are now really pursuing another part of business. So I like our guests to be able to introduce themselves. And also, before I just launch into that, I want to remind everybody to make sure you check out some of the links that we have, halftimesuccess.com, because we have a number of affiliates that are specifically for those in mid-career, halftime of life, and also our newsletter. So you will get the information when this podcast comes out and all the others, as well as the articles. So goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. Hopefully I said that slow enough, but the links are all into the notes. So Dr. Michelle May, thank you for being, I'm just going to call you Michelle, of course. I always feel like
perfect.
it,
That's fine. That's fine.
So I'd love you to give our listeners a bit of your background and how you got here to because you have family practice, MD, that's your background. So can you give us briefly a synopsis of how you got here and what is driving you to do what you're doing now?
Oh, yeah. I love that question because, Deborah, probably like you, many of us who find ourselves making a change in midlife have a personal passion. There's something that we have maybe personally struggled with and overcome and want to help others. And that's certainly true in my story. So I knew from a pretty young age that I wanted to be a doctor, or at least I thought I wanted to be a doctor. And so I sort of set myself up through middle school all the way into medical school. And honestly, in the background, I had a bit of a secret. I was struggling with my eating. I had some disordered eating and body image challenges, and I just kept trying diet after diet after diet. Actually, the same diet over and over and over again. I don't know if any of the rest of you can relate to that. But, I was in my medical practice and I started hearing that same story from so many of my patients. And it dawned on me after I heard it over and over and over again that, well, wait a minute. Somehow I got through medical school, and this patient is a principal of a grade school, and this one is the mother of 4 kids, and this guy over here is the vice president of his company. How is it that all of us are so successful in other areas of our lives and continue to struggle with food? And
Wow.
so that was the seed of a thought that maybe I wasn't broken, maybe I didn't lack willpower, but maybe diets don't actually work. And so from that, I eventually developed the program that you know as Am I Hungry? Mindful eating programs and training. And I've had the good fortune to be in business for 25 years. In fact, I left my medical practice in midlife about 15 years ago, a little actually over 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing this for a really long time, and I couldn't be happier.
Oh, how fun. And it's, it's the thing is, I want to bring out, and it's important because some people discount their experience and their background.
Mm,
Your background and your experience has really helped you, and we'll find that out during the interview here, but it's propelled you on in doing what you're doing. It's given you, all of a sudden when people say, oh, well, she's a doctor. She's done the research. And I'm sure you do. You go about it a different way and you're using that experience. And that's what's so important because a lot of people, they discount what their background has been. No, do not throw it away.
mm,
Use it, figure out how to use it. And I love to help people doing that. That is just, it's a
absolutely.
joy because then the work becomes just joyful. And your
Mhm.
topic is so very important. I mean, there's an epidemic of obesity, of diabetes, and not all of this is just associated with eating habits, of course, because you can still have, other issues, but much of it could be related to the type of the way we eat or the way how much you
Yeah. Well, okay. So that immediately takes us into one of the
yes.
reasons I do what I do, because I really, for so many years personally, thought I just hadn't found the right diet, or I hadn't tried hard enough, or I didn't want it enough. And ultimately, what I've come to realize, and this is, as you said, after I've read, a couple hundred papers about diets and weight management and so on and so forth. And I really, at first, I came to the conclusion that diets themselves didn't work. And then I realized that actually this incredible focus on weight loss in our culture is part of the problem.
Mm,
So I probably do things differently than most people you would talk to in this field, because I really have come to see that my job isn't about helping people lose weight. I mean, I did that hundreds of times.
yes.
That's not really it. But it's really to help people heal their relationship with food so that they can learn to understand why they are eating and eventually move those challenges out of the way so they can live their lives more fully. That's what happened to me personally, and it's
Mm,
certainly what I focus on with my clients and helping
mhm.
them really get to a place where food isn't a constant struggle anymore.
That's wonderful. I mean, that is such a mindset. It's freeing if
Mm,
it's not a struggle. And there are so many times. I mean, you can be in the middle of a meal and go, "Oh, this is just so good," and by the end of the meal, you are just stuffed. You just
right. Yeah.
so it's some of that mindset and how
Mm,
mindful eating and mindful way of that. And so, if
mm,
you have those steps, and it gives people a path, I think that's really, really important to give people, a track to stay on. It's
yeah.
like a runner. Well, when they're going to do a certain race, you have a track to run on, a path to be able to measure how you're going. And so that's what goals are all about. They're not to
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
just hated. They're to be, well, they're a guidance. They
Yeah.
help you. So, and I love that it's, to take that challenge out. So why don't you go into a little bit more? I mean, we could go for hours on this, I am sure.
Mm,
This
mm.
topic is huge right now because our country is just, there's the obesity and all of those areas. People struggle with this.
Yeah,
And
they do. I would say though that I work with people of all sizes, and
mhm,
people of all sizes can have issues with food. So I really don't
interesting.
see my work so much about working just on weight loss. I think a lot of people over their lives have developed a struggle with eating or not eating. And so,
Mm.
yes, the our culture is in one direction, but I would have to say after 100 years of all the
Mhm.
diets that people have tried
Mhm.
and each of us individually have tried over and over again, that's
Mhm.
really not working. And I think shifting the focus away from restriction and deprivation to conscious decision making, which is really what mindful eating is all about. And when
Mhm.
I'm working with somebody, I want to understand what their triggers are, what causes them to want to eat when they're not hungry,
Ah.
or continue to eat past the point of satiety, right?
Yes, yes.
And so we're really trying to get deep into the issues.
Mhm.
I worked with somebody today, and she struggles at work because a lot of the people bring, she said, the best hot donuts straight to all the meetings. And I've
Yes,
already
yes.
had breakfast, but sometimes I'll say no, and then it just stares me in the face. And if the meeting
Mhm.
goes too long, then I
Oh,
can't
of
resist anymore. And
course.
we had this conversation because I said, why does she bring
Mhm.
the donuts to the meeting? And we
Yes.
came to the
Mhm.
conclusion that she brings the donuts as a form of bribery. I
Oh.
said, you know, you are in charge of making decisions about your eating. So you don't need to be bribed to be there. That's part of your job. You
Right.
feed yourself breakfast before you get there. If you want
Mhm.
a donut, have a donut. But getting into this power struggle with the
Mhm.
donut about will
Yeah.
I, won't I, can I, can't, you know, it's just too much when it
Yes.
really isn't there for your nourishment. It's there as a very cheap form of payment to have you sit there
Aw.
as long as she needs you to.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, because I mean, I worked in a school district for a very short time, actually, but yeah, stuff's
Oh yeah.
always around. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I liked that you said for all sizes because
Mm,
I'm not one that really struggles with my weight too much, but I'm
mhm,
conscious about my eating,
mm,
and about because I don't like feeling overfull. And
mhm.
so there's some mindsets I think that I'm going to glean from this of just really important. You don't want to beat yourself up. You don't want to feel
No.
afterwards, oh man, did I blow it? You just don't want that to happen. And as much as is out there of social media and, all of the diets, everything, oh, here, this works now. And this is the way you should look to be an influencer. And this is that, and this, you have to accept who you are first and
Mhm.
own that. And then do what's right for you. And I love that you would have an approach, a step approach. So can you go into a little bit more of that mindful eating and that relationship? How does that relationship really change? Because
Mm.
there's this sort of immunity to change for some people. They just,
Yeah.
because they've lived with it. You're probably familiar with that book too. It's just they've lived with it for so long. So how do you ever go about making a change that will stick and not just be
Mm.
some sort of other fad?
Yeah, that's such a great question because it really gets to the heart of the difference between diet culture. That's bad, that's good, you shouldn't eat that.
Right.
You're that one's allowed, that one's, bad,
Mhm.
etc. So
Mhm.
what mindful eating is instead is it is simply deciding. So here's the way that I like to describe it. When you're on a diet, you are attempting to control what you eat, usually with the intention of controlling your weight, controlling your diabetes, controlling other things that you've already mentioned.
Mhm.
And so it's all about control and being good and following the
Mhm.
rules.
Mhm.
With mindful eating, it's not about control, it's about being in charge.
Oh,
And if you
okay.
think about this, being in control is like force, whereas being in charge is like leadership.
Okay.
People are in making decisions for themselves from the inside out. Instead of trying to follow outside in rules, they
Mhm.
are literally all choices are available to them, all choices are acceptable. It
Mhm.
is simply a matter of deciding for themselves in this moment, at this time, under these circumstances,
Mhm.
this is the best choice for me. And so, although most people come to me for work to help with their issues around their eating, what they often find by the end of our work together is that,
Mhm.
oh wait, this is an approach that helps me in all areas of my life, my relationships, my career,
Wow.
my everything, because we're
Mhm.
we're you know not trying to follow a tightrope anymore. We've got a wide path, and we're the ones who have the agency to decide how we're going to move forward at any given time. It's
Right.
such a relief for people. Most of the people I've worked with have dieted for decades off and on
Wow.
and have either given up or they feel like they're an absolute failure.
Mhm.
And within a pretty short period of time, they have hope and they feel empowered and they feel in charge of their eating for a change.
Wow. Wow. That is powerful because just the release of that
Mm.
and not thinking, well, I need to try another diet or I need to go back on the same diet and a lifetime or, something like that. So,
Well, imagine how much energy it frees
mhm,
up to go and
mhm,
live your life so that
yes.
when you're not
Mhm,
constantly thinking about what you can and can't eat or what you did
mhm.
eat and how you're going to hide the evidence,
Right, right, exactly.
you're able to
That's good.
you're able to focus on the things that really are important, like your family, like your own goals, like your travel, like your
Mhm,
partner, like your career. So it really, I find that people just feel so much freedom and contrary to what they would think, by being allowed, the titles of my book series, Eat What You Love What You Eat.
yeah.
Somehow being allowed to eat what you love and
Mhm,
learning how to love what you eat creates so much
mhm.
space in your life for that joyful, vibrant life you craved.
Yes. Oh, how fun. I can just imagine people listening going, "Oh, I want that. I just, I want to be I like to eat, but I want to live with and I want less guilt. I want to be able to be, just really enjoy it." So,
Mm,
when you talk about this mindful eating cycle, and there's like a blueprint that you give without,
mm,
I'm sure this is a process. So
yeah.
that's not, you're going to give us a glimpse today. So, but can you kind of explain a little bit of that and how it helps people just with that actual blueprint?
Yeah, so the mindful eating cycle was the model that I used when I wrote my first book. And I have to tell you that I know many of the people listening have their own entrepreneurial journey. And I would say that to really have a business that's scalable, you really have to have your own proprietary approach. And
Yes.
so that for me is what the mindful eating cycle is.
Mhm.
And it turns out to be this really effective way of helping people make decisions,
Mhm.
again, from the inside
Mhm.
out without me creating rules or telling them what to do. So,
Mhm.
the really high level overview of it is that the mindful eating cycle consists of 6 decisions that we make every single time we eat,
Mhm.
mostly unconsciously until you learn about the mindful eating cycle. So
Yes.
it's
Yes.
basically, why are you eating? When do you
Mhm.
feel like eating? What do you eat?
Mhm.
How do you eat it? In other words, how does it get from the plate or the package into your body?
Mhm.
How much of it do you eat? And
Mhm.
then where do you invest the energy that you've consumed? So
Mhm.
it's why, when, what, how much, and where. Those 6 decision points really address the issues that people have with food, whether they recognize it or not. So, for
Mhm.
example, when I'm coaching somebody and they say, "Oh, I had this really bad episode yesterday," and they tell me this episode, I can literally write the details of it in the format of the mindful eating cycle and help them see where the one decision led to the next decision led to the next decision. And that opens the door for us
Mhm.
to problem solve and figure out, okay, at this decision, if you had
Mhm.
done this, or what could you have done differently? They
Mhm.
become their own coach. And so it's really a wonderful process. They don't have rules to follow, but they need to
Mhm.
become more conscious of how they're making decisions. And obviously, we have strategies that go along with each of those decision points that
Yes.
help people free themselves up from, yo-yo dieting. But ultimately, it's about them learning how to become the expert in themselves.
Well, I love that because you've empowered them to be
Mm,
able to self, evaluate and be able to go on from there and not just stay stuck into that sort of same old cycle
yeah.
that they have been in. So,
Yeah, I call that
yes.
that same old cycle the eat,
Yeah.
repent, repeat cycle.
Oh, I like that. Eat, repent. Oh, good.
Oh,
And repeat. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just, you don't learn. You're just going to keep going around in that circle.
Yeah, well, that's what
Yeah.
happens when we're trying to use guilt to improve our behavior.
Yeah.
It really doesn't, really does not change behavior. Now, regret can be really helpful.
Yes, that's
I might
true.
eat something. You mentioned
Mhm.
this earlier. Oh,
Mhm.
it looked so good. I was enjoying it.
Right,
Why did I
right.
eat that? When you feel regret and feel uncomfortable, you can
Yes.
store that information and it can help you the next time you're in a similar situation. Guilt, on the other hand, keeps you stuck in the past of, oh, why did I
Mm.
do that? I did it
Mhm.
again. And keeps you focused on the future. Okay, how am I going to punish myself? How much
Right.
exercise do I have to do?
Yes.
What meal am I going to skip next?
Yes, yes. That's so true.
Mm,
And it doesn't matter what stage of life you are at. We've
mm,
all been through that. We've all figured that out somehow, thinking, "Oh,
mm.
I'll just walk an extra mile tomorrow." Or or I'll
What?
do a few more hills, right
Oh,
in my area. I'll just wear off those, that wonderful vacation I had, just everything. But if you understand, in the intro, I gave that little illustration of, how babies, they know when they're full.
mhm, mhm.
They're done. And
Yep,
you start to eat it, you feed them too much, they'll just start spitting it out. Here you go.
that's
They're done with it.
exactly
They're
right.
done with it. Mhm.
Well, that's right. And I think, when I was still practicing family medicine, I don't do that anymore. I mean, again, along the
Mhm.
entrepreneurial journey,
Yes.
eventually I realized I'd worked
Mhm.
my way into two full-time jobs. I was a family doctor and I was, creating this business and
Business,
I had
yes.
two young children.
Oh my,
That just
okay.
wasn't working. And so I had
Right.
to choose a lane. I
Mhm.
retired from family medicine, but I will tell you that 16 years as a family physician gave me so many rich experiences to draw from. And one of them is that I often heard people say, "Oh, Dr. May, I hate to exercise."
Uh,
And I realized that this is part of what's happened through
mhm.
diet culture is people
Yes.
use exercise as punishment for eating
Mhm.
or as a
Wow.
way to earn the right to eat or pay penance for eating something that is so-called bad. And so, of course, they don't want to go to the gym. It feels like punishment. So that's another thing that I can work with people
Mm.
on is helping them develop a joyful activity pattern that is really
Mhm.
for them. It
Yes.
really is nurturing, it's not
Yeah.
punishing.
And you can take that long, long walk and even do the hills just because you want to be outside and look at the hills and not just because you're wearing off dessert on the night before. And nothing wrong with
Exactly.
that now and then, now and then, but it's still a mindset of a consistent mindset. And
Mm,
I know you have some stories, but sometimes you can't tell those too many. But
mm,
are there some a story that you could tell of because sometimes people will relate to someone's experience. It could even be your own experience of
mm,
just now that you are freed up. But what is that feeling? Because there's a definite feeling that
mm.
happens. It's not
Yeah,
just a rote thing. Okay, now I'm just going to do this, but there is a freedom there.
yeah.
So, do you have what can happen? What are some of those
Mm.
possibilities that can
Oh my gosh, you're right.
happen?
We could talk about this for a very long
Yeah.
time. One that I often think of because it's so typical of people that I work with and so remarkable at the same
Mhm.
time. Wendy is a client of mine. She's a banker,
Mhm.
was a banker. She's retired now. And so she was highly successful in her career. And to the outside world, she just had it all. And she was just really doing everything. But she had a lot of body image concerns. She felt that other people judged her by her body size. And she had literally tried everything, including a surgical procedure,
Oh, wow.
and eventually found her way to me as kind of a last straw. I hear that quite often. And unfortunately, I really wish people, I wish I wasn't their last stop, but that often is
Yes.
the case. They're ready to give up.
Mhm.
Anyway, she worked really hard at reframing her relationship with food and
Mhm.
learning the steps of the
Right.
mindful eating cycle, and just really took her job
Mhm.
as a human being who wanted to be well. She took her job very seriously, and she literally talks about being able to cook for her family again, to
Oh.
host parties like she always loved to do without any
Mhm.
guilt. And
Mhm.
and she walks every single day. I mean,
Wow.
almost without rain or
Mhm.
shine. It doesn't
Okay.
matter. She is out there because,
Mhm.
like you said, moving her body is about
Yes.
seeing the mountains and
Yes.
being outside. It's no longer a punishment. And so
Right.
that freedom has really given her
Mhm.
the ability to move forward in is now her retirement, her early
Yes.
retirement, to move forward without having to
Mm.
worry about her health concerns. I mean, more than the rest of us, and to really work on moving her body image concerns out of the way as well.
Oh, that is so exciting. And I was just speaking this morning because I was taking one of my long walks, and I do a longer walk once a week, but and about especially we one of my girlfriends, she her parents. And I said, well, you just have to keep moving at whatever stage. You just
Mhm.
need to, unless you are, in a wheelchair completely, but you have to keep moving. It is so important to keep moving. But some people have a hard time even moving
Mm,
because of those health concerns and because of other
mm,
things that have gotten in the way, because that mindful eating can really help
yeah.
with a lot of issues because you're adding balance into a life and don't have
Yeah.
to.
Well, I completely agree with you. I think movement is important. My husband once
Yes.
said to me, I move today so I can move tomorrow. I was like,
Good idea.
that's right.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
right. Well, I'll give you a little tip.
Mhm.
Not you, because you've already
Yes.
got this down. But for those who listen to this and think,
Mhm.
oh, but I hate exercise, my suggestion
Mhm.
to you is to lower the bar
Mhm.
and ask yourself, what is the least amount of exercise I could do
Ooh.
joyfully and
Mhm.
consistently?
Okay.
So instead of always trying to, strive higher, harder, especially if
Mhm.
you're new to this, find the least amount that you can do consistently and joyfully. That might be walking to the mailbox. That's how
Right.
Wendy started. She just got
Right.
outside, put her shoes on, just walked down to
Mhm.
the end of the corner and turned around and came back until that was easy for her. And then she added on. So give yourself permission to start
Mhm.
small
Mhm.
and with repetition, build stamina, build the habit.
Mhm.
And ultimately, it works so much better than thinking that you have to do it all and do it all perfectly now.
And I loved your emphasis on habit. You're establishing a new habit. And
Mhm.
my husband and I talk about this quite often. He was a former professional athlete, and talk
Mm.
about mindset when your body doesn't do everything it used to do, and you gradually, you're growing older. But he said one of my jobs right now is to move and to keep in shape and to work
Mhm.
out. And he doesn't work out as hard as, of course, as he used to. But that is one of his jobs. And it is a mindset, especially when your body doesn't do what it always used to do.
Right.
It can be very discouraging. You're thinking, oh my gosh.
That's a good point, Deborah, because that's another thing that gets in the way of people making changes that
Right.
last. And that is that
Mhm.
they're constantly comparing themselves. They're
Mhm.
comparing themselves to
Mhm.
that other woman in their yoga class. They're
Right.
comparing
Right.
themselves to what they used to be able to do.
Mhm.
They're comparing
Right.
themselves to the pictures in the magazines or on social media.
Mhm.
Comparison
Yes.
Well, we know it's the thief of joy.
It is.
Not my
Mhm.
quote, but it's, it's literally it's such a joy stealer
Yes.
because when we are comparing ourselves to others, we will never measure
Mhm.
up. And
Mhm.
if we do, then we're putting someone else down in order to feel better about ourselves. And
Right.
that's just not the way I want to live my
Right.
life.
Yeah. Really, really good point. So, well, let's cover just kind of briefly. You mentioned four main eating styles, and I'm
Mm.
wondering what eating style I am actually, because I'll evaluate what I'm doing at the same time. I do know I'm a grazer, but anyway, if you can give us kind of outline those, because it'll
Mm.
help people identify, well, maybe where they are fitting in. So,
Yes. So the four eating styles briefly are instinctive eating,
mhm,
where you are primarily eating according to your body's hunger and fullness cues.
mhm,
You might
mhm,
sometimes eat for
yeah,
pleasure or convenience. That's okay. That's part of normal eating. But
mhm,
your primary driver is hunger.
mhm,
The second one is overeating. This is the
mhm,
one that many
mhm,
people come to me for. They are eating primarily in response to triggers. So,
mhm.
triggers might be fatigue or
Right.
thirst or
Right.
emotional triggers or
Mhm,
habits, times of day, what
mhm,
they're doing, who they're with. And
mhm.
so those triggers can drive your entire eating cycle and they will affect every decision that follows. Because I know for myself, back when I was struggling with these issues, when I was stressed out, I wasn't going to go out and throw a little 3-ounce piece of salmon on the grill for dinner.
Right, right, right. No, you
It's going
wanted
to
the
affect.
you wanted a bag of chips or,
Exactly.
Oreo or something, make you
That's
feel
right.
good.
That's right.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
there's the restrictive eating cycle, which is dieting, or it could
Mhm,
be restriction because of some health concern or weight concern.
mhm,
So, restrictive eating is where you're trying to follow some set of rules. Now, I've
mhm.
lived long enough, I'm 62 now. I've lived long enough to know that the rules change constantly, that they
Yeah.
are impossible to follow indefinitely, and
Yes.
they're going to change their mind about them anyway, even if you could do them
Right,
forever.
right.
So,
Yeah, they're gonna come out with some other study. Yeah, exactly.
absolutely. And then the final and the most
Mhm.
common cycle is what I call the eat, repent, repeat cycle that I mentioned
Ah.
before.
Mhm,
And this is because many people vacillate between overeating and restrictive eating,
mhm.
back and forth, etc. So for you, I would guess that you primarily eat instinctively, but I also sense that you have a little bit of trigger driven eating
Yep.
and a little bit of restrictive driven eating, meaning that
Yeah.
you're like, I shouldn't be doing this, or I'm, gonna
Mhm.
eat well and all that. So to me, it sounds like you're probably pretty normal. You're
Yeah, yeah,
we
yeah.
all have all of these different
Mhm.
eating styles in us. The people that I can help the most are the ones who struggle with lots of the overeating patterns,
Mhm.
restrictive eating
Mhm.
patterns, or more commonly where they're doing both back and forth,
Right.
back and forth.
Right. I'm a creature of habit. So I get into a routine and,
Yep.
you know,
It works for you.
it really does. It really does. And energy level, all of that. I just kind of know, it's just part of that. So,
Well, and I
those are,
can tell
yeah.
you that
Mhm,
for myself, that's been part
mhm,
of my inspiration for doing
mhm.
this kind of work for so long, is it literally changed my life. When
Yeah.
I stopped all of the crazy restriction and really started focusing on taking better care of myself and meeting my needs, not just my
Mhm.
physical and
Right.
nutrition needs, but also my
Right.
emotional needs. When I stopped using food to
Mhm.
hide from stress or
Yeah.
fatigue and started taking care of those needs, I
Mhm.
was just
Mhm.
generally healthier and happier.
Oh, that's great. It really is freeing then. And, you feel good. You're both ways, physically and emotionally. I mean,
Absolutely.
they are very, very connected together. So that's wonderful. Well, so if someone's interested in this, I like to, my guests to give more information on how to reach you. If
Mm,
they're interested in the mindful eating, finding out more, I'm sure they can go to your website. But I like you to say what all of that is. Some people just listen. Some people will
yeah.
watch a video. Some will read the article. Hopefully, you will, if there's an article, or you'll get at least if you get the newsletter, and if I always put links in there, so you're able to go right to the websites and everything else. So, and you'll get that right in your inbox. So why don't you give information of how to contact you?
I actually think the simplest way to find out more for yourself is our homepage, amihungry.com. So that's
Hey.
amihungry.com. And we actually have several things right there on the homepage that can help you. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see a picture of the cover of one of my books, Eat What You Love, Love What You Eat. You can download the first chapter for free. And that first chapter will show you the eating cycle, and it will describe in much more detail about each of those 4 eating patterns. You can even take a little quiz to find out what pattern you're in. So we try to do, like you, we try to do a lot of free education, a lot of videos and articles and things like that. But for people who want a deeper dive, we offer retreats. I offer an Eat Mindfully, Live Vibrantly program. We do we train other health and wellness professionals who are looking for an additional piece to their careers. So we have a lot of ways that people can access this if it resonates for you.
How much fun you are having at this point in your life. I mean, I just can see the joy and how that's given. We all need a purpose and where we're going and why we're excited to get up every day and, all of that. And I'm asked sometimes, okay, so, when are you going to retire? At what age? I said, never, until my boys put me in a home. Hopefully it won't be the case, but, you love what you do. And when you're reaching out to others and you're, connecting and the message, there's a message, and we can, change our style now and then, but it's just, I think the message that you are bringing right now is so very important, and how fun it is that you have discovered this way to just really impact, people's lives, and the quality of life is,
I feel very lucky. I feel very lucky.
Yes, the quality of life. Because we want to live these years with a great quality of life and not feeling that guilt and also just enjoying, I really enjoyed a good piece of my apple pie the other night without guilt,
Beautiful.
Just like my own apple
love
pie
to hear that. I love to.
I grew up in a family that, I should be a lot of, I'm just fortunate that way, but we grew up with a lot of pies, from my dad was from the South and, we had them all around.
Well, that's instinctive eating for you. You can eat what you really love and you don't obsess about it, and you have a piece, enjoy it. You don't feel guilty. You just move on.
You move on, and I do not get on the scale every day, believe me. So exactly. I'm not going to beat myself up, period. And I just know my clothes fit. So that's important. Mm-hmm. Well, Michelle, thank you so very much. Is there one takeaway you want to give everyone if they're listening to this and they're going, "Oh, this is so good. Where do I start?" Number one, go to your website. Of course, they've heard that. Of course, but
you're not going to be surprised to hear me say this. But a great place to start, if this sounds interesting to you, just begin asking yourself, "Am I hungry?" every time you feel like eating. Start noticing how often you're wanting to eat for reasons other than your body's need for fuel, and get curious. Well, then why do I want to eat if I'm not hungry? What's driving this urge? That little step will help take you out of the constant diet guilt cycle that keeps you stuck in old patterns that don't work.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah, just, am I hungry? Well, no, but oh boy, that chocolate sounds good.
And you know what? You can eat it if you're not hungry. There's no new rules. You can still eat it, but at least know that you're doing it. If you're eating it for pleasure, do yourself a favor and don't keep working while you eat your chocolate. Stop working. Enjoy it, and then go back to work.
That's good for me because I always double dip, and in about an hour after we do this podcast as we are recording, that's on my agenda. That's my little afternoon treat, so, but it's fun. So anyway, thank you so much. This was a wonderful topic. I feel like it's going to resonate with a lot of people. I appreciate your time, your expertise. I appreciate your story too. I think that's part of all of this. We had spoken a little bit before about, I think that's an important thing to share. If people affirming what their background is, they don't have to be a medical doctor. They can be whatever wherever they came from, but to not discount some of that expertise and putting it into what they're doing at this point. So thank you again for sharing that and sharing your heart and your background, which was important as well. So, and for everyone listening, just make sure that you goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. Check out our halftimesuccess.com. I've included a lot of our podcast guests as affiliates that have programs that are so make sure you check those out because they're quality resources there for you to check out and fun people. So thanks again, Michelle, for being Dr. May for being with us today. But for Michelle, that's a wonderful interview. And thank you all for listening this long, all the way through. And I'll look forward to being with you again next time. So bye-bye for now. Thank you for joining us. It is because of our wonderful listeners like you that we keep going strong week after week. We'd love it if you'd share and follow us to not miss a single show and even write a review. You can also find all of our articles, products, and links at womenathalftime.com.